Hey, thanks, Paddy. It was good to have you at the men's breakfast.
Yeah,
And I know this is like a church context, and
yeah,
I was just saying, what if I think we were talking earlier. You said about Christianity, you appreciate some of the moral things and how it's influenced society. But
yes, yeah,
what can you just share one or two questions you have about Christian
yeah,
things? And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I do agree. I know we chatted earlier on about the moral, some of the principles and
yeah,
stuff, and I think that's absolutely fantastic for the impact that has on society or people. But I do have a couple of questions as somebody that doesn't believe
yeah,
in God. So my first one was if there is an all-seeing power or God that is able to kind of control everything that happens here on Earth, then why do bad things happen, or why doesn't it seem fair?
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I
so
think that's a very good question because and actually. Um, I think that's some of the top questions people have problems. That's right up there.
yeah, yeah,
If God's a loving God, how can He allow suffering in the world?
yeah,
And it's a very good question. So first of all, I think I want to say, from the Bible's perspective, God's not like this sort of. He just doesn't care about the world. In fact,
yeah,
He cares that when He's suffering in the world. In fact, the first two chapters of the Bible, only a few pages, open up and they tell us that God was this was never His plan for the world to be, for there to be sadness, suffering,
yeah,
brokenness, earthquakes, um, and so God created the world good. People had a good relationship with Him, good relationship with one another.
yeah,
But then the first people did something which actually, to be honest, humanity does on a daily basis. Basically, says, God, we're going to decide what we want to do. We hear what your rules are, but we're going to decide what's right and wrong.
yeah,
And they just basically said, they turned their back on them, and it's the whole eating the fruit thing. He said, just don't touch that fruit. But as a result, the world changed because of this. And we see the world's a bit like, I had this old radio that I used to, when I studied art, used to use for painting. Back in the day when we had tapes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And to get the tape to work, I'd have to sort of like balance it at an angle so it would like pick up the tape.
Okay.
And so it didn't work how it was made, but it still kind of worked. It was like cracked.
Yeah.
And the world's a bit like that now. It's
Okay.
cracked. So we see a lot of good stuff in the world.
Yeah.
And then we see a lot of bad stuff in the world.
Yeah.
And a lot of suffering sometimes is down to just other people. I mean, a lot of it. I mean, obviously there's things like earthquakes, and that's another thing. But a lot of things are just down to, even when a building collapses during an earthquake, because people didn't cut corners or ground.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
things like that. And yeah. So that's one sufferings in the world at the moment, and sometimes people cause a lot of it, but sometimes it's also just because the world's full of things like death. So death wasn't in the world beforehand, but as a result of people saying, shove off God, I'm going to do what I want to do. This is the way the world is. But God hasn't just like left it like this.
Yeah.
And said, well, that's your fault. You sort it out.
Yeah.
He cared so much that He entered this world 2,000 years ago. I don't know, maybe 3,000 kilometers that way. I don't know. And He walked on earth. He knew what it was like to sweat, cry, be cold, being betrayed, and then beaten. And He did it because He wanted to end suffering once and for all. He wanted to get back to that world where people had a brilliant relationship with God.
Yeah.
And they also had a world in harmony. The problem is, because he's a fair God, He couldn't just say, well, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because no self-respecting judge. I mean, we say, one thing I know with my children, they go, it's not fair. They just naturally know that's not right, and that's why we have laws and things like that to try and make sure justice is done. So how can God be loving, get rid of suffering, get rid of justice, but be just at the same time? And so he became a man, and He died in our place, if we want the gift. And that way He said, I'll take the punishment. And he's done it so that one day we can be in the world, those that want that, without suffering.
Yeah.
And he took suffering on the cross. I think the question, and the Bible ends with, it starts with no more death, a perfect world without death and pain and hurt. And it ends with looking at the end of times, the last chapter, where Jesus is standing there and he says there's going to be no more death, mourning, crying, or pain. I'm making everything new. That's all passed away.
Yeah.
But I think the question is, that's all very well that one day he's going to deal with it. I think the question is, I would argue, but what about suffering now? Why doesn't he just get rid of it now?
Yeah.
And the weird thing is actually he's been kind, because if we're honest, we've probably caused some suffering in some people.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we think it's minor, we haven't run over anyone. But I mean, I was mean to my sister, mean to my parents at some stage. Lost my temper, shouted at my kid. So if God had to get rid of all suffering now, he'd have to get rid of me. And the thing is, the Bible also tells us that no one's perfect. Except for Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So then you'd have to get rid of everyone. And so he's waiting for people to say, I want that gift. I want to be part of a world without suffering. Can you take the justice that I actually deserve for causing suffering? So he took it on himself, and then said it's finished, rose from the dead, as we believe, because he was showing, actually I've shown that I've undone death as well, and calls people to accept that gift of him being the king of the world, but taking all their sin and suffering, and then says, I'm going to create another world for you to be part of. Does that answer your question, or is there anything else?
I think it does. I think it does.
I mean, I know it's sort of all cerebral, so it's
No, it does. So I kind of have thought about myself as well in this, when I've thought about the question I asked you, at the start, when I've thought about it, because I've probably thought about it for a number of years, So I'm certainly aware that I'm definitely not perfect, and I do understand. Thank you. Yeah. That's right.
Well, so Paddy, what was your other question?
So I've also been thinking about this, after we've spoken recently, and what I was wondering as well, is obviously, Christians believe in their own God.
Yeah.
So there is a high level of devotion from in other cultures, or other religions, like say Allah for Islam, or Buddha for what is that again? Sorry, Buddha is the god of. It's not like now.
Sorry.
I know.
I mean, it's different, like, thing of Hinduism. I think it's
that's
it's Buddhism.
Right.
Basically,
Buddhism, so Hinduism.
Yeah.
But so they all have their own their gods or deities. So I'm wondering why we should, or believe in God.
So I think that's a good point. So either some people say that it doesn't matter what you believe as long as you believe, and I think I'd want to say that there's other belief systems. There's atheism. So one of our neighbours, he says he's definitely an atheist, and that's kind of its own belief system, how you get through things. So you can almost say it's another type of religion, even though I wouldn't like that. So I think the thing is, people go, okay, well, either one's right, and the others are wrong. Some people want to say they're all right, but they kind of contradict each other in some parts. Or none of them are right. So I want to say that in a lot of religion there are some similarities. So you mentioned earlier about the good things of Christianity. I mean, like, Christianity helped abolish slavery in this country with a guy called William Wilberforce. They speak about human rights. There's a lot of good things, and I think we could look at a lot of other religions and pick out good elements. And there's some things that are uncommon. But I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think, from my understanding, that a lot of religions have something in common that biblical Christianity doesn't. And I'm saying some versions of Christianity, others. But the one thing that's different is a lot of religions are about what you need to do. So Islam, there's the 5 pillars of Islam. prayer, tithing, going to Mecca, Hinduism, there's certain things in meditate, or Buddhism meditation, you have to get away, so you feel self-enlightened. Maybe atheism, I believe this, so I reject that. But a lot of them say, I have to be good to get into heaven.
Yeah.
And I mean, that sounds, let me just say this, religion's doubly cruel, because it raises a standard that we can never meet and then condemns you for not meeting it.
Yeah.
And actually, and Christianity's been sometimes taught like that, and that's actually totally opposite. In fact, the people that Jesus angered more than anyone else weren't the people that had it all together. What I'm saying is, sorry, I'm saying that wrong. The people that Jesus angered were the really religious elite that thought they're good.
Okay.
And it was sort of the underdogs that Jesus spoke to. They realized they didn't have it all together.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, yeah, Jesus, help me. Where the other guys were like, you're challenging our belief system, or we don't think you're good enough, or who are you to say that I'm not good enough? I know. I give money to the poor. So often Christianity, with Jesus, came into conflict with religion.
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm waffling here, but the one thing is, all religions is do what you need to do, but Christianity's what has been done.
Yeah.
Because Christianity says that if I have to show that I love God and do certain things to get into heaven, I'm actually doing it for myself. I'm not doing it for God. I'm like, if I have to not lie, whatever, I'm going to do it so I can get into heaven. But Christianity says, look, you're never going to get it right. Our best deeds are flawed all the time. Romans passage says, there's Romans 3, I think, says there's no one righteous, not even one. No one who trusts not. And Book of Romans is directed to different groups, and they're thinking that they're looking down on other people. And actually, Christianity says you can't do it. You can't be good enough, and therefore I'm going to step down into earth and do it for you in your place, so that you can have confidence that you'll go to heaven, because it's not based on what you've done, but what I've done. I think it was Muhammad's daughter was saying about trust whether she could get into heaven, and it was something like, it depends on how Allah's feeling that day, really, even if you've been really good. Yeah. And that sounds quite terrifying. So I think the difference is, people go, oh, all religions are right, but that's pretty arrogant, because, all roads lead to the top. That means you staying at the top, seeing the whole thing. So either none of them are right, that could be the case. Yeah. Or one of them could be right, and obviously I believe Christianity is right. And the thing it does differently is saying, God is so good that you'll never reach his standard. Yeah. So he's not being mean. So what he's going to do is he's going to come serve you and die in your place and take the punishment we deserve, live the life we should have lived. And that when God looks on us, he doesn't see all Scott's deeds of things he's done wrong. Yeah. What actually happens is there's an exchange takes place. Some theologian, hundreds of years ago, called it the sweet exchange. Okay. And sweet man. So the Christian, this is the scandal. When God looks on the Christian on Judgment Day, it's almost as if like our files, the inside's been taken out, and Jesus put his work in. Okay. And he's taken Scott's file and put, his file, and put all the bad things in. So that when Jesus on the cross, it was darkness for 3 hours, and he actually said, God, my God, why have you forsaken me? God had to turn his back on himself. It's hard to understand the Trinity. And it broke both of their hearts. And eventually Jesus, after 3 hours, it was finished, and he said, mission accomplished. And so that's the difference. It's about what being done. And there's lots of other things. We can talk about historical documents and Christianity being quite accurate, but it really makes sense of the problem of a good God and trying to earn your way to heaven. Yeah. And I'll say, to sum it up, a lot of religions are like a ladder. You have to work up, but Christianity is like a couch. Okay. Thank you, God. Yeah. I hope that answers
couch would suit me as well. a good analogy.
It's also just it's just a little bit less stressful. And then the one thing people say, oh, that sounds great, because it's like a license, you can do what you want. Yeah. But when you you now have a relationship, and that makes me say I don't want to live against God, and I will mess up all the time, but he's my hero, and if he sacrificed himself for everything, then I want to live for him. But my relationship with him is not based on how good I am. I'll give you last illustration. When I left South Africa, I'm afraid to say this, I was caught on my mobile phone driving.
Oh, okay.
And the policeman called me over.
Yeah.
And look, this was a bit while ago when it was less of a thing, but anyway.
Okay.
But he pulled me over, and the first thing I saw him, I didn't want to say, "Oh, Officer Smith, I'm so sorry I let you down. I really wanted you to be proud of me. I know you love me." I was more upset that I got caught and embarrassed, and I knew I shouldn't have done it. Yeah. But the weird thing about my daughter when she was younger, when she had done something wrong, and I'd say, "No, Millie, you can't do that," she'd come running to me. Yeah. And I was like, it's strange because I'd run away if someone showed, but she wanted to make sure that we were okay. Oh, yeah. And being with God, you can say sorry to him, but he's like, yeah, but we're okay, don't worry. Yeah, yeah. He's not like, I'm gonna turn my back on you. Yeah, yeah. That just means you just can have confidence that after death, and Judgment Day, or even whatever religion there is, that's the relationship. And it's kind of strange to say, but when you're a Christian, you kind of know it's real. Yeah. 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 Thanks. Oh, thanks, Betty.
Well, I think I've waffled
mate. You are. I think I've waffled a bit.
No, it's okay. It was good. It was good. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Thanks.